This is text-based. Tanya, we're in the middle of chapter 37. Very good. Today's shir is in honor of, in memory of, the father of one of our regulars, one of the pillars of our class. His yahrzeit is Daled Nisan coming up, right? So, Reb Tzvi Doiv Halevi ben Yeshua Menachem Mendel. Is this second or third? How many yahrzeits is this? Third yahrzeit coming up. And Tanya is a good boost for any neshama, but especially a Chassidish neshama that loved Tanya and Chassidus and everything that its teachings stand for. So his neshama should have an Aaliyah, should have lots of nachas from his descendants, and the main thing is Mashiach should come and we should be reunited with him here in this world. Okay, so we're in the middle of chapter 37, and we've been talking about the mechanics of how the physical world actually becomes the holiest plane of existence. We started explaining it. We said that when the soul comes into the world and experiences embodiment, as well as it gains that partner in the three-legged race, in camp when you do the three-legged race. Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So you tie two people's feet together and they have to run, and it's very awkward and funny. So then the soul comes into the world and it gets put in a body. I guess that's the potato sack race. And then it's paired up with an animal soul. That's like the three-legged race. Imagine a three-legged race in a potato sack. Okay. So, and that's all the problem. That's the problem. We're describing it as a problem. But here in chapter 37, it's all positive. He's saying, actually, this condition of embodiment provides a unique opportunity to transform, to convert neutral things, what we call klipas noiga, that's the technical term, into holiness, into kedusha. That's also the technical term. And so we described the fact that every time the soul in a body does a mitzvah, so not only is the object which the person is using to do the mitzvah, like the lulav that's not stolen, remember we said last week, no, the esrog that's not orla, and the tzedaka money that's not stolen, and we also added some examples of our own. But I think we mentioned the coffee that we drink in order to learn Tanya. Didn't we say that last week? I have a distinct memory of saying that. I made a bracha earlier. Yeah, but in addition to that, not only are the physical objects that we're using becoming elevated, also the body itself, which is the agent that carries out these mitzvahs, and then even you can work your way even further back. Where did the body get its energy? I'm talking about its physical energy. It got it from the food and the drink that it consumed. So that's also being elevated. That's all part of the supply chain that ends up being turned into a mitzvah. And from this we can start to glimpse the totality of this process, how really it's very feasible that through millions of Jews inhabiting the physical plane over thousands of years, there could become a critical mass of conversion of neutral spiritual energy into holiness just through the course of performing mitzvahs on a day-to-day basis. Okay, so that's what we've discussed. Yes?
And that leads to my question.
That leads to your question.
So much time differentiating between the tzaddik and the Benoni and
Yeah.
the thoughts, the actions. But in this chapter, it's all about actions. And it's the actions
Correct.
that ultimately elevate
Yes.
the klipas noga to kedusha.
Okay.
Eventually,
So far what you're saying is 100% correct.
sorry.
So far what you're saying is 100% correct.
And eventually turn the klipa tameya, give it, kill its life force.
Yeah, very good. Well stated, yeah.
Why were we so caught up in the thoughts? If really here, there's no difference.
Okay, so you're asking a perfect question for this point in Tanya. You're saying, we started off and there was the whole discussion about tzaddik Rosh Hashanah and the difference between them and the insides and the outsides, and the Beinoni never perfects the insides. He only can control the outsides. And now we've come to a point in Tanya where, forget about the insides, we're exclusively focused on the outsides and extolling the power of our behaviors. So, which you're 100% correct. That is where we're up to in Tanya. So your question is, I'm trying to understand really your question, why do we even speak about all that internal stuff until this point? Why didn't we just start Tanya from this point? Or are we ever going to get back to the internal emotional stuff? Or
is there a value to the internal?
is there a value to it? Okay.
There must be, because it differentiates
Right.
a level.
Okay. So the question that you're asking is exactly the question that I want you to ask next week. But and it sounds like a push-off, so I'll explain what I mean by that. You're right, because from chapter 35, we've been focusing on action. 35, 36, 37. Remember how 35 began? It said, this is a nechama, this is a comfort to the Beinoni. In other words, this is a comfort to a person who realizes he will never achieve complete integration of his insides and his outsides. He knows that even if he'll achieve perfect behavior, he will still be inwardly conflicted. He'll always be, to some extent, drawn after that which is not wholesome and not conducive to service of Hashem. Okay, so then the way we comforted him, we said, don't worry about that, because what's transformative is when you do actions. And the tzaddik has to do the same thing. That's what he has to do as well. So we calmed him down, and we started focusing on action. Of course, we're not going to leave off with this perspective and just say, okay, now we've settled it. It's all about action. There's nothing else. There's a next discussion that has to be had, which is pretty much exactly what you're saying, which is, okay, but now what do I do with that internal stuff? I'm comfortable with the fact now that I'll never completely conquer that aspect of myself. I understand only a tzaddik achieves internal perfection. But I have to have some relationship with that stuff. So inform me, what do I do with that stuff? So that's going to be 38, 39, and 40.
Okay, and just to finish this point, if I may.
38, 39, 40, by the way, is all focused on the different kinds of kavana. Kavana means the intent and the feeling that you have when you do the mitzvahs. So this is right where you're heading is it's where the Tanya is heading.
But I feel like this chapter is so important for us, for children, for students. We often hear like mitosha lo lishma balishma, and you get like an eye roll because come on, But I think being able to say that even if it's not lishma, your action has intrinsic value.
Yes,
alone.
yes.
That's not something.
You're right. That's not something that is widely spoken about. Widely enough spoken about. In my Parsha class, so this is Mondays at 11 at Levi Yitzchak Library on Central Avenue. But Monday nights, 8:30 p.m., we have a Parsha, usually it's Parsha, evening lecture. So my Parsha class last week, for Parshas V'Yakov Pekudei, I spoke at length about this idea. Why does Rashi say in the first verse of Pekudei that Moshe was taking an audit of the weight of the Mishkan? The Rebbe asks a question, why does it say the weight? Why the Mishkal? It was a financial audit, not a science experiment. He wanted to know how much the donations were worth, not how much the donations weighed. I understand that sometimes we convey the units of currency as weights, but that's not because we're using them as weights. Otherwise, it wouldn't matter if it's gold or silver or copper. If you want, it's like, if you're trying to get weight, it's that like, let's say I need a 10-pound sandbag. Do I really care if it's sand or if it's water or it's whatever? I need the weight. But if you're talking about worth, okay, then it matters. Is it gold? Is it silver? They have different worths. Anyways, I don't want to try to rehash that whole thing that took me an hour to say last Monday night. You can watch it online. But the bottom line, the punchline was The Mishkan was a physical structure. The Mishkan's purpose was to provide a home for God in the physical world. Obviously, our goal is the macrocosm, to turn the entire world into a giant Mishkan, which is what will happen when Mashiach comes. But in microcosm, the idea of the Mishkan was a physical resting place for Hashem in this world, and therefore, the purpose of that is more aligned with the concept of the weight of the donations as opposed to the worth or the value of the donations. The worth or the value of the donations would be like the intangible qualities, meaning how much kavana a person put into it. But the weight means the physicality of it, the fact that it has mass, physical mass, and that's what counts. So, yes, this is a big concept. It's such a big concept, though, that we, like I said, in the coming chapters, we say, oh, by the way, since this is such a powerful idea that it's all about action, and the action is what's transformative, we don't want to leave you there and make you think that kavana has no place, has no significance, and that's why we sort of pendulum swing back to the other side of the discussion. And the coming three chapters, 38, 39, 40, are all exclusively about kavana, about the power of the intent. But yeah, this is a big point here about how the ultimate, I would say the power of mitzvahs are that they are physical actions. And even when you can't muster any kavana, that does not diminish the transformative effect that the mitzvahs have on the world. Okay, so are we ready to continue inside the text? Because I would love to maybe try to possibly finish chapter 37 this week. We got up to, we're in the middle of the chapter, and we were explaining a little bit of a difficult concept, not so difficult, but a little bit technical, about the 600,000 souls. You know, there's 600,000 adult men who left Egypt, so there are 600,000 main souls. Obviously, there are more souls than that because you see there are more than 600,000 Jews alive right now, and certainly throughout history, if you count that all up. So we're talking about main souls, and from each of these souls are offshoots. But the point was, we said that sort of the physical world is apportioned into 600,000 lots, and each soul is assigned that portion of the physical world. Obviously, it gets more granular than that because there are not just main souls, there are offshoot souls. But the point of it is that there's a certain quantity of the physical world that has your name on it and is awaiting your engagement with it in order to transform it from mundane to holy. Okay? So that's what we're in the middle of saying. So now he explains, Ela shishishim riboy neshamas protius Elohein shroshim. These 600,000 souls are source souls, root souls. V'chol sherish mischalak l'shishim riboy nitzutzas shkol nitzutzu neshama achas. They break apart into further sparks, which each one is an individual soul. V'chein b'nefesh ruach b'chol elam ma'arba elamis da'atzilos b'ria yitzira asira. Also, gets even more particular because there's not just neshama, there's nefesh, ruach, neshama, and there's four worlds, and at any rate, this gets very micro. V'chol nitzutz, okay. See where we are? V'chol nitzutz, lo yored lo elam hazeh. This was actually the chitas, I think, yesterday? Not today. I hope not today, because that means I'm doing the wrong chitas.
Today's about tzedaka. I am reading it.
I think yesterday's chitas started v'chol nitzutz. Today is Chav Zayin.
Yeah, so it's a portion from the 26th of August.
So yesterday, right, okay. So I'm doing the right
I think
chitas.
the last day the Rebbe gave out dollars.
The last day that I gave out dollars was Chav Vav, was yesterday, was same Kvias, was a Sunday. That's right.
They posted pictures.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, this is the chitas for Chav, yesterday, for Chav Vav Adar. Okay, this is a very long. Do you know it took me years to read this sentence properly? Years. Because it's a very long sentence. The sentence is like half a page, and it's almost impossible to read it and translate it, and read it and translate it without breaking the flow of the sentence. But basically, I'll tell you the sentence in simple English. Why do you think the soul came to the world? Do you think the soul came to the world for its benefit? No. The soul came to the soul. Oh, let me back up. The soul coming to the world is a descent for the soul, right? Compared to where the soul is from. Mm-hmm. Okay. Why do you think it had to undergo that descent? For its benefit? No. For the world's benefit. That's the point of the sentence. Okay. So let me try to read it. V'chol nitzot lo yared le'elam hazeh. And each of these sparks, meaning every soul, did not descend to this world. And it's confusing because it says it did not descend, but it did descend. It's saying, the formulation of the sentence is, it didn't descend to the world for any other purpose than what we're about to say. But it takes like half a page to close that loop. Okay, you guys following what I'm saying? All right. Although certainly the soul's embodiment is an incredible descent and an incredible exile, it's not pleasant for the soul. You think it's fun? You think it's like a vacation? It's not. It's the opposite. It's an exile. It's not going to Florida. It's going to Siberia. This should be familiar to you from chapter 35. We had a similar phrase. Even if this soul will be the soul of a tzaddik gamor, serving Hashem with complete awe and love, meaning best case scenario, he's a tzaddik and he's serving Hashem with complete awe and love. Nevertheless, lo yagia lamailais dveikusav Hashem b'tchilu l'chimu b'terem yidasa leilam hazeh chumri lo yimino v'le mitzvasa. He'll never arrive to even a smidgen of the love and the awe that he had of Hashem before he came down. So even in the best case scenario where the soul comes down, he says, oh, hooray, I was born a tzaddik. It will never, ever come close to the love and the awe that he had when he was back in heaven. So clearly coming down to this world was not to give the soul greater opportunities for love and awe of God, because even in the best case scenario, it's going to be far less love and awe of God. In fact, there's not even a comparison. Not even a comparison. Because you could say, well, the love and the awe of God that the soul had in heaven is like 100. And the love and the awe of God that a soul has in the world is like 1. So it's like 100 times more. No, that's a comparison. It's not even 100 to 1 or 1,000,000 to 1 or 1,000,000,000 to 1. There's no comparison. As any intelligent person understands, the body is incapable of bearing this. So there's no way that the embodied soul can have, it's not even possible in theory for the embodied soul to experience that kind of love and awe of God. So then why did it come down? It's a good question. So why did it come? Why?
Doesn't a neshama have to come down to correct something that
I don't know
was
about
missing?
that. I don't know. I'm going to read it. I'm going to find out why it came down. You talking about the word Tikun?
Yeah.
I don't know. Ella, you'll find out. Ella, you read but the reason the soul came down into the physical world, into a body, to be tied up in the three-legged race with an animal soul, who it was, kidei lesaknom bilvad, to fix them. To fix them. There's your Tikun. Soul came down to fix the world. Ulafridam mehara shel shalish klipos, and to separate them, meaning the body and the animal soul, from irredeemable klippa al yedei shmirish shalois seivan vein. How does it do it? Through causing the body to keep the 365 prohibitions, to keep you away from negative stuff. La'alois nav sheyach yunasim chelka sheich la miklolos elam hazeh ulakashim liyachtam bereins of baruch hu asher yamshich bohem al yedei kiyuma kol der machmitzvos esei b'nav sheyach yunus. And conversely, to elevate the body and the animal soul and all of the physical world that is allotted to it through the performance of the 248 positive commandments. Shehi hamakayemes kol mitzvos ma'asis k'nizkila. As we said, the body and the animal soul are what allows the mitzvahs to actually be performed. Like it says, like it says in the Sefer Eitz Chaim, ki haneshama atzma eina tzricha tikun klal chulu, that the soul itself does not at all need a tikun. Soul itself does not at all need a tikun.
What?
That's what it said.
Really?
Yeah. I'm on low battery. I'm nervous I'm going to lose my battery.
What should we do?
I have a charger, but it's not that long of a charger. I have it at home. It would take me 3 minutes to get it.
I'll look behind
But
the
we'd need an extension cord even to make it work.
Let's see, maybe we have an extension cord. Where's Connie?
Yeah.
When we say the soul does not need a tikun, do we mean all 5 levels of it, or some part of it?
He makes a categorical statement. The soul does not need a tikkun. Now you're going to tell me I'm familiar with the idea of souls needing a tikkun. Okay, I don't know what to tell you. It says here the soul doesn't need a tikkun. Now, perhaps. What? So you heard about the idea of a soul needing a tikkun. Okay, I heard about that idea too. The Alter Rebbe is saying that the soul's need of a tikkun, I'm taking liberties interpreting it like this, but yeah, there is such a concept of a soul needing a tikkun. First of all, the Alter Rebbe has a source. It's Chaim Vital, the Talmud of the Arizal. So, well, but maybe. So he says like this, is there a concept of a soul needing a tikkun? Yeah, sure, there's such a concept. So there could be a concept of a soul needing a tikkun. Yeah, I've heard those concepts too. But here's the deal. The present discussion is we're asking a more existential question. We're asking, could you explain to me what conditions in the first place would have justified the entire concept of putting souls in bodies? In other words, don't take for granted that souls go in bodies. Who says that has to happen? We all know it's a great descent for them. We all know it's an exile for them. So there has to be a justification for it. I mean, you don't just cause pain to souls for no reason. You don't just dislocate them and put them out of their natural habitat for no reason. There has to be a reason. So what's the reason?
Hashem went to the home in this world.
So he says, it can't be for the soul's benefit, for the soul's rectification. To the contrary, the soul itself does not need a tikkun. The soul itself is perfect.
Maybe that's the only way it could exist in the lower worlds. It needs like a lower factor.
He's saying that the soul itself, that the reason for the embodiment of the soul is not to be found within the soul itself. Yeah.
At the source, right, Adam was perfect, but since he sinned, then we do have a tikun to fix what we've done.
So maybe the damage is in the world and not in the person.
Like that.
Maybe the compelling force is not that you're broken and through embodiment you'll be fixed. Maybe that it's that the world is imperfect and through your embodiment the world can be healed. Maybe that's the premise.
So then why do souls have to keep coming back into this world?
Yeah, so the soul's coming back and Gilgulim, and yeah, a lot of that we do hear the idea of a tikkun, but
I think, Rabbi,
but can I just answer that?
Sorry.
If there's something broken in the world, remember we said earlier that these things are apportioned, that there are parts of the world that have your name on it already? So if you didn't get it the first time and then you retire, well, who's going to get it? Who's going to pick up that piece?
What do you mean? Like if we didn't do what we need, accomplish exactly what we needed to do to begin with, we come back and do it again? Or try?
I'm saying that there's some part of the world that's waiting for a specific person to elevate it. So if that specific person, meaning that specific soul, didn't elevate it, then they're going to need another try to elevate it. But it's not because there's a defect in the soul that needs correction through embodiment. It's that there's something waiting in the world to be fixed, and only that particular soul can fix it.
This is tied to the tafkid.
He uses the word tikun. He says fix. Now, there's another concept called Aaliyah. Like we said at the beginning of the class, we dedicated the class to an Aaliyah and neshama, to the elevation of a soul. The soul can always have an Aaliyah because, here's the thing, the soul doesn't need tikun. The soul is perfect. It doesn't need to be corrected. It's not broken. But it can always go higher because in getting closer to the infinite, there are infinite levels of closeness. So the soul can always have an Aaliyah, and indeed, through its embodiment, the soul does receive an Aaliyah. After its embodiment, the soul goes to a higher level than where it started from before its embodiment. But it's not a tikkun. The only tikkun that's happening here is in the world. And the world is waiting for that soul to perform that tikkun. But we're still in the middle of this very long sentence, and we're still trying to find an extension cord. Did we give up the extension?
I went to the office, I couldn't
Oh
find
my
it.
goodness. So let's continue here. The soul only came into the world in order to fix them, to fix the world, the body, the animal soul, and all the stuff that it uses to do its mitzvahs. This is literally a metaphor, and in Chassidus, a metaphor doesn't mean a rhetorical device. It means a lower level manifestation of the exact same phenomenon. This is a metaphor for Hashem's Shechina being in Galus. In other words, just as Hashem's presence has to experience exile within the physical world for a purpose, so too does the soul, which is similar to Hashem's Shechina. It also has to undergo this very difficult situation, this exile. Uvezeh yuven ma shehifliku Razal b'me'ed me'ed b'malas tzedaka v'amru sheshkula keneged kol mitzvos. Now we can understand why the sages extolled the virtue of the mitzvah tzedaka in such a unique way. In fact, in the whole Jerusalem Talmud, when it refers to tzedakah, it just calls it the mitzvah without any qualifier. The mitzvah. In other words, the mitzvah par excellence. The Alter Rebbe says, in those days, they used to call tzedakah the mitzvah. Hey, go do the mitzvah. Which mitzvah? No one would say that. They all knew. The mitzvah means the most quintessential mitzvah, the mitzvah of tzedakah. Why is tzedakah the quintessential mitzvah? Why is tzedakah the quintessential mitzvah? Why is it the most mitzvah-y of all mitzvahs? Well, what's a mitzvah? What's a mitzvah? According to what we're learning here. Connection? Where are you getting that from? You're taking that from other places that you've learned. Ratzon Hashem. Okay, yeah, we've mentioned that without any hester panim. But in the very immediate context of our discussion, what's a mitzvah?
Commandment.
Yeah, commandment. A bodily action. Now you're getting closer to it, yeah. That elevates klipas noiga, yeah. So in the immediate context of our conversation, a mitzvah is a bodily action that elevates neutral things to holy things. Okay, so that's what every mitzvah is, whether it's tefillin, or it's keeping kosher, or it's Shabbos, or it's eating in a sukkah on Sukkot, or eating matzah on Pesach. That's what any mitzvah is. But you know what mitzvah is the most mitzvah-y of all mitzvahs? Yeah. Tzedaka. Mipnei shehi ikar mitzvos ma'asos ve'elag al kulano. It is the most quintessential of all the physical mitzvahs. In fact, it is the chief of them. Shekulan, yeah.
Does that apply to all the chapters or just in this chapter it's considered?
Everything that we say is only true for the minute that we're saying it. It's like the weather in Chicago where I grew up. If you don't like it, wait a minute, it'll change. Okay? Paula, it's not Boston, it's Chicago. No, but I know, because the people in Boston stole it from Chicago. Okay. Okay. The purpose of all mitzvahs is to elevate the physical energy of the body that does the mitzvahs, and to cause that physical energy to become reabsorbed in the infinite. And you don't have any other mitzvah that includes so much power of the animal soul than the mitzvah of tzedaka. Think about it. Every other physical mitzvah, you're only using the energy that it takes to do the mitzvah itself. But when you do tzedaka, he's giving money that he worked for. Now all of the energy that he put into his work is getting elevated as well. All the energy that he put into making that money is now getting elevated. Amazing. Now I can ask a question. I have a brother-in-law that he does stocks, but really he bought some Apple stock 20 years ago, and he doesn't really. Then he does a couple deals on the side that lose money. But he's got his dividends from his Apple stock from 20 years ago, from 30 years ago. And you call that working for a living? And when he gives tzedakah, you're telling me that elevates anything? So he says, V'gami she'ena nanam yagia. Even somebody who has money that he didn't toil. He's not a construction worker.
A trust fund baby?
Trust fund baby. Mikol Moke. Nevertheless, the money could have been used to procure his physical needs, and now he uses it to do a mitzvah, so all of the potential for procuring physical needs becomes elevated to a mitzvah. That's why our sages say, that tzedakah brings the geula, because now you understand what geula is. Geula is when we reach the critical mass of the physical world being used in alignment for godly purpose. So how does that happen? It happens through the mitzvahs that Jews do, which we now understand. What are mitzvahs? Mitzvahs are acts that elevate neutral physical energy of your body and your animal soul and of the physical resources that you're using to do the mitzvah. And when we reach that critical mass where enough of that neutrality is elevated, that's geula. So what mitzvah is the most powerful and impactful in bringing about that state called geula? The mitzvah of tzedakah, which the whole mitzvah is the transformation, the elevation of this. Oh, we have an extension cord? What you're seeing now is more of an emotional catharsis. I know I'm fat and out of shape and running knocked me out, but more, I gotta tell you, emotionally, it's very tense. I don't know why, I feel such high stakes, but getting that, yeah. So I finally got this thing plugged in, and I see the thing charging, life is good. If I could just have that feeling, if I could just be in that space all day long, yeah.
Amen.
Amen. I'll take that.
Well, you're elevating a very special soul part of it.
It's true.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yes.
I have two questions.
Okay.
My first question is, the soul's level of love that it has before it comes down, is that the same level that it has when it goes back up after death?
Okay. So, we you want to ask both questions or?
No.
Okay, but so that question was answered very much like in passing.
Passing,
So-
that it gets elevated,
So now say it. Say it clearly.
that the soul gets an elevated level of love and awe of
Yes,
God after
correct.
death. That tells me that the soul benefits from coming down.
Okay. So does the soul benefit or does it not benefit?
Depends on how you
Everything. It's like everything Jewish. It depends how you look at it. Okay. Yes,
And it
it
depends
does
on what
receive an elevation from its embodiment. It doesn't go back to the same level of awe and love that it had before. Look, the awe and love thing is really best experienced without a body. The body gets in the way of the awe and love. So where's the soul going to experience the most awe and love? In heaven. Now, within heaven itself, there are levels. So pre-embodiment, post-embodiment. First time around, second time around. But it's always going to be the intense awe and love stuff is going to happen in heaven. To what degree? That'll depend upon what it achieved during its embodiment prior. Okay? But that's not the reason why the soul came to the world. The soul didn't come to the world because of the Aaliyah that it receives. In fact, I would almost go as far as to say that the Aaliyah that the soul, and this is you're gonna like this based on a comment you made earlier. I would almost go as far as to say, if I had more guts, I would go as far as to say that the ascent that the soul receives because of its embodiment is incidental. It doesn't explain the purpose for embodiment, and it certainly doesn't explain the purpose for why God created a physical plane. So it's not the answer to the burning existential questions. Oh, the whole thing is all worth it because the neshama is going to have Tanya G'nei Haba. That explains the whole thing. It doesn't explain the whole thing.
It's just a fringe benefit.
It's a fringe benefit, that's right. Now, if we explain that the whole purpose was, like the Medrash Tanchuma says, Nisav Aaliyah did b'tachtenim, he had a taiva, an irrational or super-irrational desire for a dwelling place in the physical world, that he created a realm that is the ultimate in concealment, and he wants the paradox of the ultimate concealment becoming the place of the ultimate revelation, and that's what's driving Hashem. Okay, so now we understand what it's all about, and therefore souls have to come down into the physical world because that's the only way they can transform the physical world. And by the way, why through souls in the first place? Why not just let Hashem do it? Because then that's not coming from the world, that's coming from Him. So to have a dwelling place in the lower realms doesn't just mean that's where it's located. It means also that's the process through which the dwelling place is created. He doesn't want one that He makes from above to below. He wants one that we make as souls in bodies from the darkness, which is why, by the way, that the temple is still holy and Mount Sinai is not. Because the revelation at Sinai was completely unilateral. God came down. Easy come, easy go. It wasn't transformative. But the temple was built through human partnership. So therefore, that sanctity remains forever. Yeah.
So I just want to make something clear for myself.
Yeah.
So is the premise of everything that happens in the world, it's because Hashem has darkness in the world, we come down, we struggle, and the struggle is what it allows us to have that clarity and much more light than we would have had if we wouldn't have had the struggle.
But clarity is the same as love and awe,
Yeah,
meaning it's not the purpose. It's a nice fringe benefit.
okay.
Clarity is a subjective experience, just like love and awe are subjective. So,
Revelation is objective? I mean,
well, there are two kinds of revelation. There's objective and subjective. The purpose for the embodiment of the soul is not to increase the subjective revelation that the soul experiences. It is to increase the objective revelation. The objective revelation means when Mashiach comes, everyone will know it.
Right.
Everyone will see it. In fact, not just all human beings, but even the animal kingdom.
But what I'm saying is maybe the soul needs to come down, even though it's a struggle, even because we hear that the soul says, no, I don't want to go down, I'm
Right.
really comfortable. The soul needs to do that, like the same as the temple, because Hashem wants to see
So-
our involvement.
Yes, because, but then the question is, well, what's the purpose of our involvement? For whose benefit is it? And I want to just say something. When we're talking about these very lofty concepts, nobody's wrong, okay? These are all different, legitimate opinions. You know what I enjoy, and I mean that sarcastically, meaning I hate it, how the internet has affected even the most supposedly holy segments of the Jewish world, that we are so polarized. The internet is good at that. It puts you in an echo chamber, and then you hate anyone who doesn't think like you. Now, for thousands of years, Jewish people understood that the most fun that could be had was through a machlekes, was through a dispute for the sake of heaven, and we understood the nuances of different opinions. Okay, so now, because the internetification of people's brains, anyone who doesn't think like me is a koifer. Okay. I'm going to say something. There are two different approaches. They're both legitimate approaches within Yiddishkeit. They're both legitimate approaches. One approach is that the ultimate drive and the ultimate purpose is, I'll oversimplify it and say, how existence ultimately benefits me. Now, why would God create an existence for my benefit? Because tava tov lahetiv, he's good, and that's what he wants to do. And that's one worldview. And I'm sure that's a worldview that's very familiar to many of you, because it's a very popular one. That is not the Baal HaTanya's worldview. That is not the Baal HaTanya's worldview. The Baal HaTanya is saying, especially in this chapter, that the world was created because of a desire that Hashem had. Hashem was working on a project that was of interest to him. And any benefit that we may accrue is almost incidental to that. So, is the world here for me, or is it here for Hashem? Tanya says the world's here for Hashem, and we play a very important role, more than very important, that's damning with faint praise. We play the essential role in bringing about that which Hashem is seeking. Now, how can a perfect entity seek anything? Okay, fine, so now we have a nice philosophical discussion. But you're going to have philosophical discussions from the other point of view as well, about tava tov lahetiv, or why is that happening? I mean, you could be an Aristotelian and say that he's so good it just automatically overflows from him and he can't even control it. But that sounds even weirder than saying that Hashem has a desire. So there are theological discussions and philosophical discussions that will ensue from either approach. I just want you to understand, and I'm oversimplifying by categorizing this into two different worldviews when there's probably many more nuances than that. But I just want you to understand, when the Alter Rebbe is stressing here the idea that the soul did not come for a tikkun, but rather to provide a tikkun for the physical world and to bring it out of its neutral klippa state and bring it into a kedusha state. So basically what he's saying is that the soul didn't come here for itself. Okay, what were we going to say?
No, so according to the Alter Rebbe, there's no such thing as b'shvil li nivra ha'olam.
Why would you say that?
Because
Bishvili nivra ha'olam is a maimer chazal. The Alter Rebbe is not obviating that concept. But by the way, how would Chassidus Chabad explain Bishvili nivra ha'olam? It explains like this. Olam maloshin helam. What's ha'olam? Olam maloshin helam. The concealment. Bishvili, it's my problem to deal with the concealment. God concealed himself. Whose problem is that? I don't know, my problem. No, it is my problem. My entire life has to be devoted to transforming the concealment into revelation.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's God's problem, and we're here to help him out.
No.
It's God's problem. We're here to help him out.
Because he wants
I'm okay with that.
What is the desire?
The desire, dir b'tachteinim. Yeah.
Which means
Dwelling place in the lower realms, which means the ultimate paradox of the infinite revealed within the finite,
which can only happen when we
turn physical, neutral things into holy things. Yes. So it's God's project that we, out of our sensitivity, make our project.
And how do we benefit from that?
How do we benefit? Well, we benefit in many ways. I mean, first of all, we've been speaking about the Aaliyah and Neshama. I mean, none of us want to die, but
Well, I have a
yeah.
question about that.
Yeah.
That was my other question. Because Rabbi Cap was saying that everything in the world, like our name is on certain things.
Right.
We have to come to.
Right.
So I want to know, on the one hand, I want to know how I can find where my name is.
Ah,
Then you don't want to die.
Because I don't want to come back again.
right,
and
right,
again.
right.
But then again, if I come back again, I may have a high or a Aaliyah. and
Right.
more love
Okay,
and also
okay,
I'm
okay.
conflicted.
How do
Okay.
you know this is not
So-
you coming back?
It
Probably is.
Maybe,
Okay.
but it's
How do you know?
You die if you finish your.
So the question is, how do you know where the stuff is that has your name on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. it's a
Okay.
great question.
Okay. So here's what I want to tell you. Ach begeirel yechalik es haaretz. Parshas Pinchas. The land shall be divided by lottery. It's talking about how the 12 tribes were allotted, no pun intended, but allotted and lottery. Yeah, it's interesting. How the land was apportioned to the 12 tribes. Geirel, yeah, a lottery. We're still in Chodesh Adar, still the month of the lottery. Buy a ticket. What does that mean? The land. And in the light of chapters 35, 36, 37, when I say the word the land, it has a whole new meaning now to you, doesn't it? The land doesn't just mean the land of Israel. The land means the physical plane, physicality. Yechalek, it shall be apportioned. Portions of the physical world shall be assigned to various souls for them to be assigned with the task of elevating those parts of the world through lottery. What does a lottery mean? It means that sometimes the part of the world that I was assigned for elevating doesn't make sense on paper. Sometimes it does, but it doesn't have to. In other words, if you sit down and you say, well, here are my talents, here are my resources, here are my preferences, and here's what I'm going to go after. Here's what I'm going to target. These are the sparks in this world that I think I should go after. I think it makes sense that those are mine. Maybe. And it's nice to have such a plan. I'm not making fun of the whole idea of it. But then you open up the door and you walk out into the world, and a different mitzvah presents itself to you. What do? Do you push aside the mitzvah that presented itself and say, get out of my way, I'm on a mission, I already figured out where my sparks are?
Depends on what chapter you're in.
Depends on which chapter you're in. You could save that line for the rest of this class. You could always say that line and you'll always be right.
Exactly.
If you will just,
Today, the answer would be tzedaka.
that's right, yeah. That's right, very good. You could always say it depends on what chapter you're in. Okay, very good. That's always going to be true. The one thing that's always going to be true is depends what chapter you're in. Okay. So I set out on a mission to go do a mitzvah that, according to my calculations, seems like that's my spark in the world. But then another mitzvah comes and meets me on the way. What do? The real question.
You do the mitzvah that
Stay
you
with
do.
the one that started.
No,
No,
I don't agree.
when that's presenting
Mitzvah
itself,
comes up.
Hashem put it there for you.
Yeah, obviously it's there.
So the lottery,
Not you.
the lottery means
It depends on the mitzvah.
that
Be going to a bris or That's a really
You know, this vort probably is real. It's really not good for people with executive functioning issues. These are the people that show up like 4 hours after a bris, and they're like, "Did I miss it?" Oh, on the way, I saw a lady who needed her groceries to be brought in, and no, I can't lift the groceries, but then I found some day laborers and I hired them and I brought them to her house and I let them do a mitzvah. There's a lot of mitzvahs. Anyways, does anyone have any, can I still wash? Okay, all right. But the point is, hashgacha pratis is the lottery, okay? Hashgacha pratis is the lottery. So the way that you know where your sparks are is Hashem doesn't make this overly difficult. He doesn't make it overly burdensome. He doesn't play games with us. He presents us the sparks. You know, I would say, you know, I'm dating myself, but I do that all the time. But
In good company.
yeah. So it's like the 1980s Lakers, Magic Johnson, a 6'9" point guard, which was kind of an anomaly. But he would set up everyone else to score. That's why Kareem, until recently, was the scoring leader. I mean, also he had longevity in his career, but I wonder what percentage, someone could Google this, what percentage of Kareem's field goals were assists from Magic. At any rate, the point is, sorry, Paula, I hate the Celtics still. That's in my blood. I grew up in Chicago in the 80s, and I was left with only one strong sports emotion, and that is a hatred for the Boston Celtics. That's the only thing that remained with
What
me.
about assists from Hashem?
That's what I'm talking about.
Oh.
You thought I was talking about Magic Johnson?
Oh, okay.
That was just a mushel. That was just a mushel. By the way, all these references are mashalim. They're, yeah.
They're really
Yeah. So
they keep us on our toes.
Hashem presents us with an alley-oop pass. You know the alley-oop? It's when you throw up the ball, like you lob it up, and then the other guy comes and grabs it and dunks it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So Hashem provides us with the alley-oop pass to come and swoop in and slam dunk the ball into the basket.
I love that. I love that, Marshall.
You like that?
Yeah.
Okay. You don't get it?
You're not
What?
a basketball fan.
Okay, so I want to know where the sparks are. Where,
Sparks are everywhere. The question is, where are your sparks?
right. Where
Does he make it easy for us?
In front of your face.
That's why I said, does he make it easy?
He makes
for
it
us?
easy.
Very
He makes
easy.
it easy.
If we just look.
I'm looking.
He presents us with opportunities that may on paper not appear to be our mission, but they come to us, they present themselves to us, and we have to have the sensitivity to seize those opportunities as they come to us. And as far as the notion that'll keep you up at night, that, well, maybe my sparks are in China. Okay, yeah, maybe. Maybe they are. So here's what I want to tell you.
So you have communist sparks.
Okay.
Can I choose where I want my Rebbe say?
No, you cannot choose where you want your sparks.
Is this tied into Taffy and Yichus and everything in our life?
Tied into what?
So easy, our life should be
Yes,
easier.
yes, 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 yes.
So then our
Okay.
life should be easier if it's that.
Okay, so I'll tell you very quickly a story. There's a story, there was once a guy, since we're over time anyways, but we missed time because I was running to get the charger. Okay, so there was once a guy
Is there anything out there?
who, he was a watchmaker. And he went to the Rebbe Marash, the fourth Rebbe of Chabad, and he said, I have an opportunity to move to a town where they don't have a watchmaker, and I would make good money. But the problem is, see, right now I live in Polotsk, which is a Jewish community. The town I would move to is called Vladimir, and there's no Jewish community. In fact, the only Jews who live there are Cantonists. They're Jews who were conscripted for 20 years in the Tsar's army, and they're only culturally Jewish. They have a shul, but they don't know how to daven. They can't read Hebrew.
Do they wear watches?
So, but they buy watches, right? So, should I go? So, the Rebbe Maharash told him he should go. So, anyways, he went and he made a lot of money. I'm telling this story very quickly. He did very well. Okay. He comes back to Lubavitch for a second Yechidus to tell the Rebbe Maharash he's making a lot of money. So the Rebbe Maharash asks him, and what are you learning with these guys? Like, do you have shurim? Do you set up classes with these Cantonists? He's like, for what? To teach Aleph Beis? They can't read. He's like, yeah. Do you learn Aleph Beis with them? He says, I'm barely keeping up. Like, thank God business is so booming, so I barely keep up with my own learning. And no, I can't learn Aleph Beis with these Cantonists. So the Rebbe Maharash says to him, why do you think that Hashem sent you to this town? Do you think, and listen to how he says it, do you think that Hashem could not have provided you with a livelihood in Polotsk? Hashem took your parnasa and put it in that other town for the sole purpose of luring you to the place where your soul's mission is located. That's the story. I'm not telling it dramatically, but the point of it is, if your sparks are in China, Hashem will force you to go to China. He will create reasons that compel you to go there. Now, those will not be the real reasons why you're going to China, but it will create a scenario that will compel you to go to the place where your sparks are. If there's no scenario compelling you to go there, there's a reason why you're not going there, because you don't have any sparks over there.
I totally can relate to that.
You got this.
But I don't relate to it for myself because I feel like, oh, I'm just scared.
You relate to it for everybody else?
But aren't sparks combustible?
On a flight to
No,
Israel
I
and
thought the
back.
Rebbe said all the
And
sparks
sitting
already
next
taken care of.
Because that's another
I'm
discussion.
going to tell you two stories. Are you finished with the recording?
You want this on the record or off the record? Off the record? Okay, and we're finishing the recording. Okay, all right.